I hereby call this Asheville City Board of Education special call meeting to order. We have present James Carter, Martha Geithner, Joyce Brown, and Miss Patricia Griffin. Because this is a virtual meeting, I'll be calling on board members to, as we vote, or if we vote, I'll be calling a roll call for individual votes. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so moved. So before we get started, I want to make an amendment to the agenda to add the end of course testing and CTE testing to the agenda. We're going to add it third on the list. Is that okay, Dr. Freeman?
Yes, ma'am.
Principals. Okay. All right. So we will start with Dr. Jean discussing approval to explore the selling of the Asheville primary campus.
So with the cost of the continuing need of the building, along with the cost of either renovating or building a new building, especially since we have capacity at other buildings, we, for example, at Hall Fletcher, we have around 250 students in a building that holds around 550. There's also capacity in Vance, and we have capacity also at Montford on the lower floor. We have capacity in all the existing buildings that don't have the same needs base in terms of the scope that APS has. And we don't have an enrollment issue in terms of huge enrollments. If we do, there's availability of land on other campuses. And from my point of view, and from a budgetary point of view, we don't need this building. This has been a conversation that's been going on for years here. This is not the first time this has been brought up, and we need to make a move to do something with this building. And if we continue to own it, we're going to pay for insurance, liability, and what are we going to do with the building?
So Dr. Freeman, do you have information on, I guess, everything that we've been dealing with the building and the cost to renovate or save that
Renovation is going to run about $9 million, and we're going to be out of the building for 18 to 24 months to do that. To build a new building there based on 200 a square foot, you're going to spend at least $24 million for the scope of that work. And I go on, why would the county commission that has to approve our building do so if they know the capacity levels we have in our other buildings? Sorry about that, Doc. I don't think that's been shared with our county commissioners before, the capacity level we have at other buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure it's been shared with the board before, the capacity levels. But we have capacity at other buildings that don't have nearly the need and updates as that building does.
Any other questions from board members to Dr. Freeman?
So Dr. Freeman, I'm sorry, go ahead, Martha. I'll ask mine next.
Okay. Hey, Joyce. My question is we do have that information, and I understand that there have been several people who have requested it. Is there some way that we could possibly put that on our website so it's easily accessible for people who are interested?
If I'm not mistaken, Shane had already done that earlier in the school year. I think all that, I don't know if Shane's here or not, but I think he had already put that online before.
Okay, so it is available for people to have a look and to think about what, okay, that's all.
A couple of the emails that I received have that information because they've been looking at it.
So we did put that up, and it's been taken down since then. We put it up when it was at the open sessions of with the parents of the primary and the preschool, but we can put it back up again though.
I think that would be helpful.
Hey, Joyce. Joyce had a question.
I did. So Dr. Freeman, it says in our agenda today that we are gonna, you're requesting that we approve you the opportunity to research selling the building. Would you be planning on giving us like a report before we make that final decision?
That would be fine. Yes, ma'am. We could certainly,
Okay.
certainly I would share that information with you because in the end, you folks are the ones that determine what happens.
And do we know yet if we have to receive permission from the county commissioners regarding selling of our property? Do you know the details on that?
Yeah, I can address these. Yeah. So the general statute does require an actual study be conducted, and Dr. Freeman has already alluded to a lot of the elements of that study. It is not something that will take a lot of time and energy to do. The legwork has pretty much already been done. I have formats that I'll provide to Dr. Freeman so that he can put the information into the format that's required by the statute. We've helped close a lot of schools. It does have a school number. It is listed as a separate school with a principal. So you do have to follow the general statutes, and you have to have a public hearing after the study is completed. And that just means a time during one of your meetings for folks to comment. And then at that point, Ms. Brown and other board members, you would be ready to take action as a board to close the school. It does not require the approval of the county commission. This is something that is completely within your discretion.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Certainly.
Okay, wait a minute. So I think there's been some misunderstanding, and correct me if I'm wrong. We have not actually said exactly what was going to happen. We are in the process of doing a study. And what we're trying to do is make sure that everything is taken care of and that the building is appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what Christy just said was that we're beginning a process to look into perhaps making some changes. We are going to allow Dr. Freeman to go forward with looking into that process. And then there will be a public meeting to discuss the findings before anything is actually done. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Right. There's actually a public hearing on the study and other things. And this is not an uncommon process at all. Reconsolidation or reconsolidating schools is part of it as well. So this is the same process, whether you are simply closing a school or whether you're consolidating programs or moving students around. So yes, all that is up for consideration. We are beginning the process with your vote today.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
One thing that I would like to see if we can also explore is the option of selling the building but keeping the land. Especially right now in Asheville, we know that prices of a property in Asheville is in acquiring new property in Asheville is always expensive to do. But I think that if there is an option of getting rid of the building, because I agree the building is old and has a lot of problems, and there is a lot that goes into upkeep of that building and we have capacity, as Dr. Freeman said, at other locations. So I'm fine with getting rid of the building, but let's at least try to keep the land and look at a lease agreement or something. But something, I don't know if that's possible, Chris, could that happen?
Yes, well, we obviously to be able to sell the building, the buyer would need access, would need parking, would need the amenities with using a facility. So we can look at with the administration at the size of that parcel. We might be able to subdivide it, might not, but that's something we can certainly consider, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members regarding the Asheville Primary School building?
Shonda, I think it would be a good idea if we did a capacity study at our other buildings, just so that we have that data very available for people to see that the capacity levels we have at each of the buildings. I know that we do, but to have it factually, and we can put that online also, I think would be important.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Freeman. I would like to see that.
I also think that's a really good idea, and I think the community would be able to actually do their own looking and thinking if that was available to them. So thank you for doing that.
Any other questions for Dr. Freeman?
No.
All right.
Let me just add though, if I may, we had 2 town hall meetings about this earlier in the school year where we had a great number of community folks on those meetings. So this isn't like this was just brought up yesterday. We've been talking about this, and from a historical point of view, this has been talked about for years.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion, board members?
No.
All right. Moving on. Next, we have our housing internet contract. I don't have who has that contract, Dr. Freeman. Is it Shane?
Repeat that again.
I don't know who's going
Oh,
over
okay.
the housing
Got it.
contract.
Yes, I have that.
Okay.
And I
So,
need to address whatever as well, Shane.
okay, so this is the contract. It's now been revised to include Buncombe County Schools. Originally, we had we're going to enter into that with Asheville Housing and the foundation. But since that time, the Buncombe County Schools Foundation has also contributed as well. So the new revised contract will recognize both those entities and will recognize what parts are going to be coming from Asheville City Schools after the initial installation process goes in, which is the monthly subscription. So that should be linked in the agenda for anyone. And then, of course, if you have questions, be glad to take this time for myself or Chris. Georgia, I think, is also on here who can answer some of that as well.
And board, I think you've talked a lot about this. You know the funding stream. The city of Asheville is allocating $50,000. The county of Buncombe is going to funnel money to you in the amount of $100,000 to go, and that all goes to the hard costs for the installation. And then the 2 school boards are agreeing to go in on the monthly subscription fees. And I think that both of your foundations are going to work real hard to try to raise that money to work to be able to pay those subscription fees. So again, this is a great joint effort of all of the public entities to bring that forward to you.
Any further discussion or questions for Chris, Dr. Freeman, or Shane regarding the housing contract for internet services? Well, I'd like to thank you all for your hard work. Most of you know that I do work for the Housing Authority, and I appreciate Dr. Freeman and others exploring that and providing equal access to internet for our students who oftentimes don't have access to internet or residents. So thank you all so much on behalf of the Housing Authority for looking into that and for making that happen. That's some equity in action. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a question. Excuse me.
Mhm.
I was reading over the contract. It said that it's a 4-year commitment. Is it a 4-year contract? And then at the end of 4 years, we re-up that contract, or is it, how is it laid out?
That's correct. It is just a 4-year commitment. So for this to be able to extend beyond 4 years, then there would have to be a new vote of the board, a new agreement between the entities. So you are only obligated to the 4 years. There'll have to be an additional agreement beyond that.
Thank you.
It is not a rolling contract.
Okay.
Yeah, as you know, we don't like rolling contracts, and this is not a rolling contract.
Any further discussion or questions on the housing internet contract?
One more question. Our CARES money that we got from the federal government is going into helping pay for the monthly, correct? Or is that on the other side?
Right now, the monthly's being carried by the foundation
Okay,
for our part.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions regarding the housing internet contract from board members or staff? Well, thank you to our city council members and our Buncombe County commissioners for supporting that initiative with us as well. So thank you all so much for that. Next, we're going to have our EOC and our CTE testing. Is Ian or Laura on here? Melissa?
Wait a minute, isn't it it's the baseball field first, the field first.
Well, I put the
Oh, okay.
EOC because I added that to the agenda. I amended the agenda and added
Okay,
that to go
sorry.
after the contract.
Yeah,
All right.
I do think Ian, it looks like is on the call, and is what you're asking for is an update on the testing plan for this week?
Actually, I would like to make sure we all understand exactly what the testing is looking like and what options parents and students have going forward should they choose not to have their children go into a face-to-face exam. When would the children be able to then retake the exam? Just what are the parameters and what does it look like? Because it's the time of COVID, and I think perhaps talking about perhaps doing a curve after we get some data in would be helpful for all of us to understand. And as I mentioned, this is a big deal. So yeah, we'd like as much information as we could possibly get on that.
Okay, so Laura and I are here on campus. Testing is actually happening right now, so we're taking a sidestep to come in. So I'll try to address the first question around testing schedule and availability to students, and then Laura is going to speak a little bit more to the grading side of things.
Okay.
So there's a schedule for both EOC and CTE courses for this week. If students for either of those exams are unable to attend for whatever reason, they will be given an opportunity to make up the exam in January. So we have extended for the EOCs, and I think CT as well, extended through the full month of January for our makeup period for the fall semester exams.
Okay.
So that's the first step. That's the first option. Now, if a student does not show up to that, again, for whatever reason, for their grade, so that we can complete the semester, a 59 will be inputted into their exam grade. Now,
Okay, that's averaged in with their regular grade. A 59 would not be the grade just because they didn't come to the exam, correct?
sorry, yes, so 59 will be
Okay.
20, will be the exam
20%.
grade, and it's 20% of the overall
Right.
grade.
Okay.
Now, moving forward, if that student would like to test in the springtime, so when we have exams for second semester, they will have the opportunity to take the exam then, and we will replace the grade, the 59, with whatever grade they got. Additionally, if students would like to test in the summer testing window, so there's a summer testing window after we finish that's shorter, but families will also have the option to test in the summer testing window.
So they have January, they have the end of the second semester, and they have the summer in order to take these exams should they choose not to do them at this point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Do you have any other sort of logistical testing questions before Laura speaks to grading questions?
I do. So if a person has been out of a particular class for a semester, is there the opportunity for that student to participate in any kind of prep that other students are getting? Is that possible that they could go in and do that? I would kind of hate for somebody to go a whole semester out of a course without having that. I'm just wondering if that is available, and if so, we can look into how we could best facilitate that process.
Yes, we would definitely have review sessions and support for students. I'm not 100% sure what exactly that'll look like, but we'll evaluate our attendance numbers, evaluate the number of students who did not attend and who plans to test, and we'll provide as much academic support as we can for those students to prepare them for the end of course test they'll be taking either in the spring or in the summer.
Okay, so the grade that they would receive if they did not come in this time would not be a permanent grade. It would depend on when they actually take their exam.
Exactly.
So even, okay,
The
All right.
59 will be in place if you do not attend the exam between now and the end of January. And if at any point after that, a student takes the exam grade will replace the 59.
and do they have to say when they're going to take the exam, or may they just let you know when they're ready?
Well, so where we're going to approach this is as we have students come in this week. So we had 120 students come in this morning. We have staff on call to call all the families who did not attend and to start making plans for what their next steps will be. And that will be a wide range of things depending on the family. And we will
Right.
repeat that process in January. We'll repeat that process in the spring, hoping to make a plan that will suit each individual family's needs. But we're reaching out to families to gather information and to make the best plan we can.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Ian,
Yes, ma'am.
that sounds like a better plan because I, like Martha, I was concerned about this 59 grade. And so now I understand that that grade will be added to the overall exam grade.
Yes, ma'am. So the 59, so the way it works is we're required to make the EOC count at least 20% of the overall grade. So all of the work students have been doing all semester, that grade will be 80% of the overall grade. So this grade, whatever they get, some of them may get a 99, that will be 20% of their grade. What we have chosen to do is to set the absolute floor, whether or not a student shows up or if they show up and don't perform great on the exam, the absolute lowest grade we will award anyone is a 59. And what that will ensure is that no one will fail a course as a result of the exam. Now, it may negatively impact their grade, but they will not fail a course because of the grade, for the exam, excuse me.
So Ian, I have a question. Since we have gotten a lot of emails about the Durham option, what happens in that case? I mean, I know that Durham's doing 90%, we're at 59%. I think Buncombe County is at 0 if you don't take the test.
Right.
So we're right in the middle, almost in the middle. But is there an option of doing a higher grade? But what does doing a higher grade or a higher percentage help? If we say we set it at 70%, does that help students? Does that harm students? I mean, give me some info there.
So I'll say a little bit here, then I'll let Laura chime in because we've had a kind of a committee of folk analyzing this, and we've run a number of scenarios with a number of minimums and kind of evaluated its impact on students' grades. So we've gone back and forth, and raising it slightly, really mathematically, although it will improve, it will make a student's grade better. It's not a significant impact. Now, increasing all the way to 90, yes, that would be a significant difference. But increasing it just slightly, I don't think mathematically overall would really sway kids' grades. But I'll let Laura chime in here.
Okay, before you go, let me ask one more question. Okay. All right. So in the event that a student does not take the exam, that 59 basically is a placeholder until they actually do take the exam. Am I correct in that? It's simply a placeholder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the event, which is entirely possible, that with a new administration coming in, it is entirely possible that perhaps all of this testing will not be useful or used. There's been some conversation about what the Biden administration may be doing with testing.
Yes, you're right. The change in the government may have some effect on our requirement to test. We have the ability, and Derek Edwards and Nicole Cush as principals of the school have the ability to grade and place students. And so we have the mechanisms to ensure that whatever effect that not testing in the spring has on those students, we can ensure equity across students for the year retroactively, right? So we'll evaluate the situation. If that were to happen, we will say, okay, let's think through this. Let's think through what we're going to do for the kids in the spring. Let's think through what happened to the kids in the fall, and we'll come up with an equitable solution to be sure that a student who took Math 1 in the spring doesn't have a different effect on their grade or different result who took it in the fall.
Okay, and so should that happen, parents and students will be made well aware of what the process is going forward, correct?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I know Laura is going to answer that. So
Yes, and so I'm going to speak a little bit to the grading side of things. One of the 90 as a minimum is a big, we know right now that this test is going to test students on all of the curriculum in the class, and we know that students haven't been able to cover the curriculum as in depth as they normally would. And so what we are doing on the grading side of things, in addition to the minimum, is we as a district have the authority to curve the exam grades, what we put in as that 20%. And so we talked a lot about the numbers and obviously talked a lot about the minimum of a 59. But the plan for the test scores is that we are going to wait and get the data back from the students. So we had, again, 120 students test English 2 this morning. And then we're going to look at 2 different options for curving. One, there are 2 methods that you can take to curve exams. One is a grade distribution, where you would say that a certain percentage of students has an A, a certain percentage of students has a B, a certain percentage has a C, and so forth. And then you would distribute the grades accordingly. So what that would mean is a student, if all of the test scores come back and they are, students have a C, but they are in the threshold that we would say that percentage gets an A, their score would be curved from a C on the exam to an A on the exam. Another option is to add a certain number of points to every exam. So for example, we could say every exam we're going to add 10 points, which would mean that if a student takes the test and they had a 70%, we would add 10 points and bring them up to an 80% and do that across the board. We are looking at both of those options, and we're waiting to get the test scores in to see which one of those fits best with how students are doing in their classes currently. The goal of the curving will be to minimize the adverse effects from this test as much as possible from the student's grade. And so there obviously will be some fluctuation, but we want to minimize that as much as possible. And so right now, just to give you an example, we've looked at the English 2 grade distribution, and currently this semester, 50% of students in English 2 have an A. And so one option we could have would be to say that 50% of the students on the English 2 exam would get an A and then set it up accordingly. And so we know that the grading side of it is obviously a concern, and the 20% is not a place where we have wiggle room as a district, but we do have the authority to change the grades within that. And so we want to honor the work that students have done this semester, the hard work that they have done, and make sure that we are minimizing any adverse effects that this test would have on a student's final grade.
Can we say that? Let me chime in.
And Mr. Edwards is here as well.
I'm sitting over on the side. The 10-point, the other option where Laura was saying like the 10-point, adding a blanket number to it, that's not an arbitrary number. We would have to look at the distribution of scores that we would get back, compare those to other distributions from other years, even though like we know that this is not a normal year, but you can look at the distribution of scores in other years to figure out how to adjust it. But even then, you still have to have the scores back before you can do that. It wouldn't just be an arbitrary us picking a number out of a hat.
Can you all,
Oh, yeah.
may I ask a quick question? Can you all speak to how you came up with the 59% as the bottom grade for holding the placeholder if they don't take the test right now, as opposed to a higher grade like 90%?
So it was a larger committee that involved a number of folk. I think the logic was that 59 would not cause anyone to fail a course. That was sort of the starting point, was that, in the high school world, gaining credits is the path towards graduation. So we didn't want to do anything to adversely affect a student's ability to graduate and not earn credit. So that was sort of the starting point. So there was discussion about lower numbers. There was some discussion about higher, but honestly, 59, actually 60 was sort of the highest number that we were discussing. And I think it's fair to say that most of that had to do with trying to maintain as much academic integrity for the courses and the assessment process as possible, while not adversely or overly negatively impacting students. So we thought that choosing a grade that, and I can share, I don't have it on me right now, I can share a kind of a spreadsheet that has a distribution to show what would happen to every single grade if a student got a 59, to see kind of how it affected them. So that there was, consequence may not be the right word, but there was a result of not testing or not performing on the exam, but not one that would, starkly and negatively impact a student's overall grade. So in some ways it was a compromise, but honestly within the group, it was a higher end compromise than what was discussed overall.
So how does this 59%, how does that look with our African-American children who typically don't test well, and I didn't hear a demographic breakdown of the 50% of students who are currently receiving an A, but how does that impact those children?
So, Ms. Sanford, I will come back to that. I want to finish what Ian was talking about. We knew at the time when we were talking about the 59, kind of what was happening around us also, and that a 59 far exceeded what anyone else was doing at that time. And, our decision making was really to make sure that that we maintained everybody's credit, because that was ultimately the most important piece. Now to come back to your question about the demographic breakdowns, we've not pulled that information this morning, but that'll certainly be something we look at when we look at our comprehensive numbers and what those distributions look like across the test anyhow, even from year to year, but certainly within this semester.
Okay, so I have a question. How many schools are actually giving anything other than a 0? Do we know?
Ian can.
You mean in the western part of the state or just in general?
In general, I'd be interested in knowing. I know that Durham is the only one that I'm aware of that's actually giving a grade like that. But I would like to know if there are other school systems. And in the western part of the state, I think the only ones that are giving a grade of 59 are us, and nobody else is giving anything close to that.
Some of this hasn't really been shared with me in official capacities, but I can say 90 is the highest I have heard. And
Right.
there are other districts in the area who are assigning non-0 grades. So there are other districts who are, they're greater than 0 and less than 59. I don't want to cite, because some of that information I got a while ago, but there are other folk who've chosen a number other than 0 to put in for students' grades.
Are we aware of anybody higher than 59 though?
And I have to admit, I have not sort of had a comprehensive study of this. Aside from Durham, I'm unaware of anyone who has a higher number than us. But don't quote me. I have not done a comprehensive study. It's possible it's out there, but I have not heard of other districts.
Okay, my concern is, I totally understand what's being said. I also know that we have kids who have worked very hard all semester and have not had the advantage of having a face-to-face in class with a teacher. Last semester, we at least had several weeks when that was an option. This time we have not. That makes this a little different for me than what we did with pass-fail last semester. I am concerned. I understand what you're saying, and I understand the theory behind it. I also understand that the feds are dictating that this testing has to go on. And I know that our state superintendent has given us the option of perhaps curbing the grades or giving other times to test. And I know that we are in the middle of testing, but the grades we have not gotten the grades back. Is it possible for us to take a look at, is this the only option we really have? That's, I guess, my question. I don't want kids to feel like they have to come to take an exam. I don't want them, because, I mean, seriously, we are in the time of COVID, and this is a choice made by families and students. And I
Sure.
want kids to be able to make, and their parents to make, the right decision for their individual family. And I'm afraid that I would just like for us to look a little bit deeper, and I know that's throwing the works into everybody, but is there any way that we could possibly think a little bit more outside the box and take a look at what else we could possibly do? I just don't want kids coming in because they feel like they have to, because if they don't, they're either going to fail their course or they're not going to be able to get in college. And you know, then there are the kids in the middle who've worked really hard. So I just feel like we need to look a little bit more.
So
Before you say,
One word, please.
one of the things I would ask is, have you heard back from any, since colleges, a lot of people have been bringing up colleges with this, have we heard back anything from, especially our state colleges on, are they looking at, taking into account what's happening with testing and with people who are virtual and so forth during this time? Just out of curiosity, I don't know if that's something that y'all have heard anything about, but.
do you want to take it?
We haven't heard anything official about state testing at this point. We do know that ACT, SAT, standardized tests are something that the colleges are definitely looking at and reevaluating their policies.
Okay.
So, you know, whether, because we're a semester, you know, one other factor to consider that hasn't been brought up is because we finished the semester before Christmas break, we're testing earlier than a lot of other districts and specifically districts in the eastern part of the state. And so for Durham, for example, their primary testing window is towards the mid to end of January, whereas you know, ours is a full month earlier. And so, and I say that to say, because we've already started our testing window at this point, that's something I think to consider on the communication side of things with families, that we have had a number of students who have already shown up for testing and we will get their test scores back. And so, you know, whatever we decide, any changes we were to make at this point, we would need to make sure that we were mindful of that and the students who did come in today to test and who are here this afternoon to test as well. But we haven't heard anything official from colleges about the state specific or the 20%. But I do know that when it comes to standardized tests, there are some changes there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see something more soon.
So
Could you speak to the safety right now as well? I just want to I know that emails went out, but just speak to the safety protocols that you all are doing.
Sure. So as students arrive on campus, they are health screened with both temperature checks and through the health screening questions before they leave their cars. So either if students drove themselves, they're screened before they leave their car. If students are driven by an adult, they're screened before they leave that car. They come in, get their testing location. We are filling testing locations as students arrive and not having students predetermined. That way we can move students into a testing location as soon as they get on campus. Once students check in, they're escorted by a teacher to the testing location to ensure that they move directly to the testing location. All the rooms have been evaluated by our safety team. Capacities have been established for each of those. We have clear, and I can go in detail if you'd like, we have clear protocol about interacting with computer devices and sanitation and wearing gloves. As students finish the test, instead of staying in the room, they're able to leave. So in years past, a student would be asked to sort of stay in the room until it's over, but to reduce exposure as much as possible. As a student finishes, they're allowed to leave. We have a holding area where students, this auditorium, where students can remain socially distanced to wait for their rides to be picked up. And at any point, students are escorted, have eyes on by adults as they're moving around campus. So to ensure, one, that they try to stay as socially distanced as possible as they're moving, and two, that students, go to where they're intended to go.
I have to speak up because I just came from testing.
I'm sorry, Miss Feinblatt, we're not allowed to have public comment in the middle of a work session. I'm very sorry for that.
I think Dr. Freeman had something to say, but I did want to just remind everybody that as a board, we didn't decide to go through with testing or not go through with testing, or even at the superintendent's level. This is a government mandate, and on the federal level. And basically, if we didn't provide this funding, then we would be breaking, not funding, I'm sorry. If we didn't provide the testing for the students, we would be breaking the law. So the discussion is around the options for the students. And if there are any ways, Ian, that you all can revisit the 59% to make sure, especially our seniors, that's who I'm thinking about, that they have the best chance to get into the schools and the colleges that they want to, because we are in the middle of a pandemic. And if you want your child to show up, then that's your prerogative as a parent. But for those that do not, and their students are doing well in school, I wouldn't want this test to impact their ability to go to the college of their choice.
So if I can, let me just add this, that we are giving parents 3 choices. Their kids do not have to come in this week. They can come in later. But going on what Martha was talking about, I would ask that Ian and Derek and Laura look at the 59 base. Can't we somehow make that better? And I want to reiterate, students do not have to come in this week, and this is a federal and state mandate. They do not have to come in this week. But is there a way that we can look at that base level, which is more appropriate and will not affect or deter students from their goals? I will say, and I said this to the administration that I spoke to on Friday evening, we had a meeting around 8 o'clock, that, we have been doing this remotely. And unfortunately, the state and Fed have put us in a hard position. It doesn't seem right that we're telling students to stay home, but during this testing period to come in. I have no power or authority over it, other than saying if I was a parent and I didn't feel comfortable, I would not allow my student to come this week. I would wait until the other moments. I think we can certainly do some support in terms of that whole testing mode if it continues under President-elect Biden. I do think there are going to be some changes. But I would say, can we change that 59 base, or at least look at it as something that is more lenient in terms of what our students are going through? This is a very difficult time for parents and students. Students that are advocating and self-promoting probably feel like they have to be in to take this week to do well. But is there a way that we can create a base? 59 doesn't make me feel that much better. I'll just be really honest with you. If I was a parent, 59 of a kid who's really tried all year doesn't sound like a great base. But I think if we can look at that, that would help alleviate some of the issues while still promoting. If you don't want your kid to take the test this week, please don't do it. You have that ability.
So we'd be happy to take the advice from the board and from you, Dr. Freeman. The 59 is what we arrived at. If there's a directive, we will implement whatever directive is provided. My understanding with the Durham situation is that the Durham school board is the one who made the decision and implemented that policy. So if our school board wants to give us a directive, we will implement that directive to whatever is desired. With 59, we thought at the time was the best decision we could come to. But we are by no means dead set. But as Laura said, they're just the logistical balls in motion at the moment. That if a change is going to be made, it needs to be made as soon as possible.
Well, I think that would certainly change the baseline. We're still saying that if you want to test this week, you can. And let me tell you, for you and the teachers, because the teachers were involved with this 59 base too, correct? In determining.
Yes, sir.
this is not disparaging what you guys have done whatsoever. I mean, I just want to make that clear. This is not disparaging what you guys have done whatsoever. But maybe that can help with what's going on also. So I think that looking at that base level, I think if the board, Ms. Shonda, wants to tell us to relook at that 59, we can certainly do that where it's much more amenable to alleviate the stress off of these kids.
I would very much like for us to do that, Dr. Freeman. And I, as a former teacher and a former parent and a grandparent at this point in time, I honestly and truly believe that that's what we need to do. This is not the kids' fault. It's not the teacher's fault. And we need to take care of our kids. So I would very much like to suggest that we raise that 59.
So I agree. Are the other board members, I have to ask you individually if you're in agreement with, James, are you in agreement with raising or having them to determine another number other than the 59%? Joyce?
Yes. I respect the decision that has happened thus far and the teachers that have used their wisdom to come up with this amount. But if I also think that if we could raise it higher, I would definitely support that if the teachers were comfortable with that and the administrators were comfortable with that.
All right, Ms. Griffin?
I'm in agreement. We've used that 59. We've used that 59 before at the middle school and high school. So I'm in agreement to raise it to be fair for the students.
Okay. So yes, Dr. Freeman, we have a consensus that we would like you to re-examine the number, the 59%, please, and let us know what your team comes up with.
Sorry,
Yes.
may I make a request? So as to not be in a similar situation, it would be great if our committee could have a little guidance as kind of the range we're looking for. I don't, just sort of if we're aiming for, between 80 and 90, or just to have an idea of what is the direction y'all would like us to go, just so that we don't, end up in a similar situation where we come back a recommendation that's not to what you guys agree with.
For me, I think a range between the 90 and the 60. I mean, in between those numbers, we just want to make sure that it's not going to do more harm to the students. So
I would make a suggestion that since Durham City has led the pack with the 90, I mean, I am willing, Ian, to listen to your ideas, Laura's ideas, everyone's, but I think 90 has been set out there. I don't think that would be a bad number to look at. And I would just like to, we're having some chat that no teachers were involved with this. I can only tell you that I was told they were involved with it, and I believe what my staff tells me. But I think we go back, and since we have that comparable to Durham City, what issues will form down the road if we do a 90? So instead of just giving a range, Ms. Shonda, I would suggest let's start with a 90. And if they come in lower, give reasoning to the board and go from there.
And I think that is a wonderful suggestion. And I think that's fair and equitable for everyone. And I do believe that that will take a lot of the stress off of some of the kids who have worked really, really, really hard and really want to do well. And I thank you for that. I think this board, it's not the kids' fault. It's not their fault, and it's not the teacher's fault, and it's not our fault, but this is where we are. So we need to make the best of this particular situation. And I think a 90 sounds like a really good option.
So let me ask this question before we move on so we don't have to go through it later. So if we replace it with the 90, and if a student doesn't show up and they show up later and they get less than a 90 on the test, are you going to change the grade from a 90 to what they actually made on the test like you would with the 59, or are we just going to leave it at a 90?
Again, I would appreciate if that was part of y'all's recommendation. I think you could do either way. My thinking was you would not do anything to harm a student's grade. So if 90 is the minimum, then 90 is the minimum period, no matter what. That was the intent for the 59 as well. So, if it were 59 and a student scored a 47, we wouldn't replace it with a 47. We leave it at a 59. So if
I
we're
just-
choosing 90 to be the minimum, it's the
Yeah.
minimum, and it only changes if the student's grade is above 90.
Students have not received, and I say this from a national point of view, remote learning is exactly why we need great teachers. And for me, with everything that's gone on with all students, giving them a higher score can only help them through what has been the worst year of my entire career in terms of educating children. So for me, from the superintendent's point of view, by giving every kid a 90, we're just giving them a little push up for those who need it, who it hasn't been equitable or fair to. So that's just my opinion.
So, sorry, so as a practical question, should I take this to mean that the decision's been made to make the minimum grade 90 and we should communicate that with families and teachers?
I'll leave it up to Shonda and the board. That was just my suggestion.
Okay.
Martha,
I totally agree. I
James?
do.
And
James?
I agree, Shonda.
All right, Ms. Griffin, thank you. I couldn't, did you say yes, James? I didn't hear you.
I will go with the 90. I was thinking more around 85 personally, but you know, if 90 is, well, I'll just say I would prefer 85, but if 90 is what y'all want to do, then so be it.
And Ms.
Joyce?
I don't know if this requires an actual board vote.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask Ian that, and Dr. Freeman, is this something that the board has to vote on, or can this be delegated to the administration based on the conversation that just occurred?
So we every year, even non-COVID years, local LEAs have the authority to adjust grades. So there's not a need for a specific board action. The reason I brought up the Durham board is just to have clear direction and have motivation moving forward to how we should proceed, not necessarily that there's required action on the board's part.
Okay. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I think you were going to see Ms. Brown's feeling.
Yes.
But doesn't sound like you need an official vote.
Okay. I still want Joyce to be able to say what she thinks.
I think that we should give some clear direction, and I think 90% is a good place to be. I think we should go with that.
All right.
And that would include all kids even today. That would include all kids even today that are taking it. The first day of testing.
Yes. So one thing I do want to add, the 59 was set as a minimum both for state in-person testing and for teacher-made assessments. The biggest difference is our teachers have autonomy to create the teacher-made assessments based on what they have covered with students this semester versus a state assessment. We do not have that flexibility. And so I just want to make sure that that is known, and also get some clarification that we are just talking about the minimum grade of a 90 for state in-person required testing, so the EOC and CTE post assessments.
Okay.
For me, it would just be the state mandated testing. That's just my opinion, but I would certainly be willing to listen to anybody with a differing view, the experts in the high school on it. But I'm just thinking of the required federal and state test that we have to do.
So are you saying that there are other students taking tests that aren't?
Yes. So we do have teacher-made assessments that are happening that still count as 20% of a student's final grade. We have some exemption policies in place based on students' grades in the class that have been the school policy for years, so we are following those as well. And those teacher-made assessments have a wide range. So it may be an exam in the class, but it might be a project that students are working on, or a presentation that they're doing, or a written paper. And so because it is a teacher-made and not something that is state-made, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what that looks like. And students have been already working on those. And they actually completed those last week with their classes. So the Durham decision was only for the state mandated test, not the teacher given final. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
So yes, I would say it would just be for the state test as well. I would agree with that.
Okay, great.
Martha, Ms. Griffin.
Yeah, I think probably I would agree with that. I do know that teachers work very hard on those exams and the projects, and I don't feel that we have the right to tell them what they can do with their own assessments. State, I feel, is a difference. So yeah, just the state assessments and CTE. Yeah.
Ms. Griffin.
Okay, I'm for it because I think, I'm sorry, I'm just having some asthma problems. I agree with it. I won't go any further to keep from coughing. I agree.
So you agree that that we won't change the teacher test to 90?
Yeah, because I think they need flexibility to do what they need to do. Flexibility and some innovation in what they're going to do.
Okay. Joyce?
And the issue with the state test is that we're requiring them to take it in person at the high school. And so I don't think that teacher assessments should be affected by this decision.
So the teacher assessments can be taken at home, correct?
Yes, they actually were given last week. And so some, again, like I said, were kind of culminating projects in a class and may not have been an actual test, but students have already completed those. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Freeman, Ian, or Laura? Okay. Thank you so much for all the time that you took to update us on the EOCs and for the changes that will be made. I'm sure a lot of our parents and students and teachers will be happy to know that this won't have a negative impact on our students. So thank you.
And so for those, just to clarify, for those going forward the rest of this week, so the 15th through the 18th, if a parent does not want to send their child, that child does not have to go, correct?
So we are still legally, we legally cannot discourage kids from taking the assessment. So if students do not attend, we will be contacting them about the makeup opportunities, both in January and in the spring. And so they will still be, contacted, and the state still requires that they do take the assessment. So I think that, yeah, that is an important note that they do still have to take it at some point.
And so
Can we make sure that can we make sure that Ms. Cush and just Derek, I guess, updates their staff with the options and the information discussed in the meeting, please? Today. Yes. As soon as possible.
Yes. Yep, we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Cassida, who will be discussing the field turf at Asheville High's baseball field contract.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, we had put this contract up last week, and we had been at the time waiting to see about the possibility of taking the entire $900,000 cost and doing a financing over 3 years, sort of to lessen sort of the impact.
Can't hear Shane.
Okay, we got my mic turned up as loud as it'll go. Is this any better?
Say something.
Is this any better?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just try. Okay. All right. So basically, since that time, Chris Campbell has given us some feedback legally that partially because I guess and Chris, you can go into a little more detail as to the fact of this, but we're not allowed to enter into that type of a contract financing wise because I'm assuming that Buncombe County is the official landowner of our field. Is that correct?
Actually, what the company was proposing was a lease purchase or installment financing agreement by which they would take a security interest in the turf and we would pay for that. over a period of years. And while the county is entitled to enter into such contracts, the school board is only allowed to enter into those types of contracts for certain things such as computer equipment. That's usually the preferred way that we do computer equipment. So unfortunately, legally, we are not able to finance over a number of years. So what we have done is we've simply suggested that the administration review the ability to pay now. And I think the best way to think about this is that over the next 3 to 4 years, your administration was looking at different capital needs and trying to decide about paying for the field. My understanding, and Ms. Harvey and Dr. Freeman can speak to this directly, my understanding is that there is money to pay for this in the current fiscal year. It's just that there will be kind of a reordering of capital priorities since it will all be paid in this fiscal year. So we feel real good about the contract. You'll have a performance bond for 100% of the performance. The only issue is, do you want to go ahead and spend the full $990,000 this fiscal year? If you want to do the field, you're going to need to spend that money this fiscal year.
And George, I do think is on there. We have already budgeted this for the athletic department. So because of the COVID situation, it certainly did move up, and we had spoken with Sunita Warren Dixon and with the principals at the high school to understand that this was something that they were requesting to move up. So what we'll do then is we are basically just asking Georgia to change a line item that was already there for the athletic department for another portion, which involves some of the older locker rooms, and we're asking her just to do that all in one swoop this time, since that money was allocated for that, and we'll push that project to next year.
So the question I would ask Georgia is that an equal amount, Georgia? Is the cost of funding the entire track equal to what we were going to lay out with the locker rooms? Or is there is the difference more of a negative or a positive to the budget for this year?
Dr. Freeman, it's an equal amount. We're not going to expend more money than we planned or save any.
So there's really no effect on the budget then for doing this?
Correct.
Okay, sounds good to me.
And the lockers or locker room would be pushed to next fiscal year or next school year?
Yes, that is correct. The again, with the caveat, if COVID issues still, are affecting the ability to for the athletic department, they would shuffle that around. But hopefully, we would be through that next year. And yes, it would go back to our normal capital updates for the athletic department.
So Georgia, a different question. Going forward with the locker rooms, does that, even though we haven't worked on that budget, does that going to increase or decrease the expectations? Or is it the same with the lockers? We're going to have to expend all out at once.
The lockers we could do in sections. It would not have to be all of them all at one time. That's a decision we can make next year and the next year.
Because I want to reiterate that if the budget maintains the way it's going this year, with the same monies that we've been receiving, we're going to be in a deficit, correct? If all holds the same.
Yes.
Okay. That doesn't constitute me saying that we shouldn't do the track. I think we have to. But I think the board and the audience and everyone needs to be aware that this is the financial position that the district is in.
And Shane, are we or we are not getting money from the city towards this?
Now, so remember, this is separate from the track. This is the field turf.
The field turf, right?
For the baseball field, which will also be used by some other sports as well too. The contract that we are working on with the Parks and Rec for the track that's a separate conversation, and basically it was going to involve bonds that the city was looking at and how they were going to expend some money. So those were separate pieces. We were really wanting to see how much the city was going to be able to bring to the table before we entered into the track. The track does require some significant upgrades as well. It's been on our capital needs list also. So that was something that the city had asked us to look at, and they were going to work with us on that. So those are talks that are still underway.
And board members, remember that your operating funds and your capital improvement funds are separate pots of money. So you are not sacrificing money for employees and programs. You're making a decision of capital projects based on capital resources. Two separate pots of money.
Thank you, Chris, for mentioning that. I think Georgia, and I could correct me if I'm wrong, I looked at the numbers the other day. I think we currently have 4.5 in capital need money, 4.5 million, and that could only be spent on capital needs, correct?
That's correct.
So I would add to that, do we have more capital needs than we have money in the capital fund balance?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly you mentioned the money that we would require to bring up the building at Asheville Primary to code was like the $9 to $12 million range, depending upon our last number. So certainly
So although two different funds, we're still in that economic issue of having enough funds to cover all the needs that we have.
Sure. So I think we're making the recommendation to go ahead and continue with this contract and go ahead and move forward.
And the motion would be, Ms. Sanford, to approve the field turf contract subject to final legal review, because there are just a few final tweaks we want to make to the contract. And those tweaks are actually in the version that was uploaded to the board. They're not significant, but that would be the motion to approve the field turf contract subject to final legal review.
Do I need to do that now, Chris?
I think we have an action section coming up.
Oh, we do. Got it. Got you. Okay. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Chris. Shane, I think it's you again with our policies, 4023, 6305, 7510, and 9030.
Yeah, so at the last board meeting last week, these four particular policies were sent at the last minute from the North Carolina School Board Association for policy updates. We put those on the agenda for first read. And at that time, we realized some of those actually might need to be considered for immediate approval because two of them are COVID related. So we asked for you to go ahead and bring those forward to today. I will go over those quickly, and Chris can add anything extra that we need to be aware of. But 4023 is a brand new policy to Asheville City Schools. Basically, it allows and ensures that under Title IX regulations, which have been recently updated, as you well know, that we are paying special attention to students that are pregnant or that are parenting children, that we set aside funding and that we have additional programs that ensure that their education continues and that we will work with those students in every way possible. So that's 4023. It's a very short policy, but does provide a lot of protection. The 6305 is one of those that provides some temporary COVID-19 requirements, which allow us to, or force us, and ensure that we are following all of those DHHS and NCDPI Transportation Department guidelines about transporting students. I will tell you that all of those have been put into place, and those are, as we are running buses now, those are the plans that are in place currently. Also in that policy, it allows us to employ transportation safety assistants, what we call TSAs. It delineates between those and bus monitors. but they do that to make sure that those are crucial individuals that are going to be used in these COVID-19 protocol plans to have an extra adult on the bus. So we currently do have those individuals. We have hired some. And then also we're using some of our bus drivers. We're putting 2 bus drivers on a bus. That way that we're keeping them on a yellow bus, which allows them to be paid. And it also gives us the ability to do the screening and monitoring that the state is requiring. There are a couple of other pieces to the policy here that are not COVID related that have changed in terms of crossing signals. That as a new policy came down from North Carolina in terms of the DOT and the training that is required. And I will let you know that those trainings have occurred in our district, and those have been conducted. And then a last one is a slight change to the accident reporting policy in terms of making sure those requirements about what types of accidents have to be reported. The next policy, 7510, it is an HR policy related to leave. It does talk about the COVID-19 requirement that we have a health certificate, basically a doctor's note specifying the safety of an individual to return if they've been on a quarantine or have been exposed to COVID-19 or have had symptoms of COVID-19. So that is a requirement that will remain through the remainder of this year, even if you are in a period of vaccine or a vaccine is released. And then also, unrelated to COVID-19, in Section D, it talks about how employees can take personal leave. It specifies much more, in much more detail about how those employees can or cannot take personal leave days, which is a special type of day. Does not require that a person tell you the reason for their absence, but it is if it's a teacher, it does require them to pay for the substitute that is deducted from their pay for that. It's a sort of a special type of leave, and Chris can speak to it if you as well. And the last one is a facility construction policy. This one involves change orders in particular. You'll remember back about 3 months ago, we had the Claxton roof that we were able to do additional pieces of the roof because the project had come in under budget. And we asked for a change order to add a different piece of the roofing there at Claxton. This basically sets that amount at $50,000. Anything less than $50,000, the superintendent and the designee have the ability to go ahead and approve those. Anything above 50 would require board approval. And then it also goes into a little more detail too about some of the requirements for things that go above the $300,000 contract pieces that are there as well. That there's certain requirements that we have in any type of change orders for them as well. Chris, you're free to add anything else if we need to.
Shane, I think you did a great job of summarizing those policies.
Shane, I just have a question about the buses. Can you tell us what when we do go back to school and we're using the yellow buses to pick up students, can you tell us what that process will look like for students as it pertains to COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically we have to consider the school bus stop as part of the school property or part of the school. So when we arrive to the bus stop, if a student presents themselves, we are inclined to take them onto the bus no matter what. Now, at that time, we will have an individual who will screen them. They will do a temperature screening, and then they will also, there is a attestation form that parents have to complete to allow a student to enter the bus that says, I will not send my child if they have any of the following symptoms, which basically is the screener that a parent will have to agree to. Now, they're going to add that as a one-time screener where they are told those questions and that they should not send their child. Now, that simply lets them onto the bus. Now, onto the bus means that they are still separated by 6 feet, actually a little bit more than 6 feet, and those seats are going to be held individually, each one seat or one student per seat. They'll have to be masked to ride the bus as well. When they are, if they temp high, then, or if they have symptoms that a monitor is worried about, we do have one seat at the very front that's isolated from the other students, has more separation, which does allow a student what we call an isolation seat. And then they would sit there, and then that student would be immediately escorted to the isolation room in the building for a nurse or a health monitor to take further action to help the student. If they are able to get onto the bus, they will still have to be screened to get into the building. So basically, the bus will have its own monitor and driver with temp checks, and then we will do the same thing again when they come to the school. So it will be basically two gateways.
Thank you, Shane.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions for Shane regarding transportation or any of the policies that he discussed? All right, thank you. On to phase 2, Shane, our 3000 series, second and final read.
So these policies were presented at the last meeting. I don't believe we had any significant questions or changes that I recorded from that meeting, but I'm certainly free if you have any questions that have arisen since then as we bring those up now for second and final read.
Any question or discussion for Shane regarding those policies? All right, thank you, Shane. We appreciate it.
Gladly tell you that this completes the 3000 series, and so we
Yes.
will work with Chris and his office as we move on to the next board meeting. We'll have a new set of policies and a new section, but we have certainly made a lot of progress over the last 6 months. Christy Coates has been wonderful, and I appreciate her help so much in that process. And Chris and his office and Cynthia Lopez have been wonderful as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Shane. And if there is nothing, any further discussion from board members? Okay, if there is no further discussion, may I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
And Madam
So
Chair,
moved.
the motion would be, let me state it.
Go ahead.
To comply with the law, the motion
Okay.
pursuant to 143-318.11A1 to discuss confidential student matters under FERPA and confidential employee matters under 115C 319 through 321, and under subsection A3 to discuss matters covered by the attorney-client privilege.
So
May
moved.
may I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you all for joining us today. So is there a link, Chris, that we need to go to for the?
I'm putting the breakout room right now. Board members, give me just a moment and I will be sending y'all to your breakout room.
And Ashley, Michelle, obviously just make sure I'm on that too, please.
Yes, sir, you're on it.
Thank you so much.
Nice picture, James.
So board members, you have been invited to join a breakout room at this point.
I am, thank you.
Okay, Joyce and James, I see everybody. Okay. So is Derek Edwards on here? So can we get Derek?
Do you want me to call him back?
If you could call
Okay.
or get him on the Zoom, because he has new information regarding how Durham is doing their EOCs and CTE testing.
Are you back on yet?
I'm coming. I'm trying to get in.
Hurry up. We need you.
Oh, I'm coming.
Okay. All right. See you in a minute. Bye.
Y'all know that commercial from Progressive? That was Martha.
Oh, Lord. So Joyce, before we start again, Do you need anything? I mean, you've kind of been out of everything. Do you need us to go Christmas shopping for you or anything like that? Is Joyce here?
Yes, you're on mute, Joyce.
Okay, I was having trouble unmuting. No, I am no longer in quarantine, so I can go Christmas shopping now.
All
But
right.
thank you for the offer. I appreciate it.
I Christmas shopped from my computer. Nobody's getting anything except stuff that I send them in the mail. You know? Oh. Peppy just sent you a congratulations, Joyce.
It looks like we've got Derek now.
Eric,
So yes, hello y'all. I'm back. I've got Miss Parks and Mr. Nelson and myself. We're all sitting here. It's now the appropriate time for us to talk.
yes, you can
Okay.
say.
All right. So we have been on the phone trying to sort out specifics within the Durham decision so that we can be upfront and honest with everybody as we communicate out. Currently in their decision, if you look in it, it is worded in that every child who attempts a final exam, the lowest grade you can get is a 90. And basically that was to protect kids, students from adverse effects of COVID right now. But they had to take it at some point. So where they're less clear is if the child does not take it, it is an incomplete. And they never say what happens in that. It just is an incomplete. So we have spoken to somebody that is in the Durham School District, and what is going to be happening for children there, students there that do not ever take the exam is they will get a 0. So we wanted to be kind of really upfront with everybody that what is happening with that decision. So there it's, if you take the exam, whenever you take it, you get 90 or above. The placeholder in Power School is an incomplete and until you take the exam, and then if you never take the exam, it converts to a 0.
Or a 59.
So that is their policy. So I want to make sure that's clear to everybody on the board. And I think, so we've been talking, we have already communicated out that the floor for our students, the bottom is a 59. So I think I want to be very clear moving forward that if you never take the test, if you never take an exam, the floor is a 59, not a 0.
Okay.
Because the whole reason we went with a 59 to begin with was to protect students and maintain credit. I don't agree with the fact of getting, philosophically, I don't agree with the fact of getting a 0. So the three of us were sitting here talking that we really want to make sure that was included in our communication because it was not clear in their communication. Like we've had to do a deep dive and dig and to find out exactly what they were going to do with it. Any questions?
So, just to be clear, as of right now, with our current 59, if you don't ever take the exam, you just get a 59. But if you come in and take the exam at some point between now and June of 2021, you will get whatever grade you got. If it's under 59, your base is a 59. So if we were to move this, so 90 is what by Durham is saying that you get a 0 if you don't ever come in. If you don't ever come in, Durham is not putting it out there like that, that if you never come in, you get a 0. You're not getting the 90 if you never take the test.
So, correct, yes. That's what we've learned is that a 0 will be awarded to anyone who does not take the test at any point. The goal from the Durham's public schools point of view was to, if testing is still occurring in the spring, to encourage students wait because of safety concerns to later in the year. The folks who we talked to, they also said that part of their consideration was the likelihood that they anticipate that the new federal government will perhaps change testing requirements. So that weighed into their decision. That was not the sole factor, but part of their decision-making process was that they thought / hoped that the requirement would be waived, period, for students in the spring.
So
That would
that's
be
kind of
retroactive, right?
that would be retroactive. That would be retroactive
for the fall.
So we don't
For now?
know. So that would be within the purview of the federal government and perhaps the state DPI's clarification. And also, we locally have the opportunity to adjust grades so that we sort of hold people harmless, right? So it's possible the federal government could give us clarification as to how to deal with that. But even if they do not, we have the authority at the local level to be sure that, you know, again, taking a student who takes biology in the fall and a student who takes biology in the spring, that we make sure that no student is harmed in any way, that whatever the best outcome for all students is what applies to all students, if that makes sense.
So the issue is that there could very well be, and that's kind of what the scuttlebutt is, that there will be a waiver once the Biden administration takes over, and that it probably would be retroactive. Okay, but that doesn't help us right this minute, except for knowing that perhaps that is coming down the pike. So what you're saying is what we're doing, and that is what I believe the state has said and given us a waiver to do that we may extend our testing for this semester into next semester. And a student may take their test at their discretion and their parents' discretion, either in January, at the end of the second semester, or at the end of the summer school term. Is that correct?
Yes, those are all the testing options at the moment for students and their families, yes.
All right, so if someone chooses not to take it now and they choose not to take it in January, we talked about the fact that there would be some sort of a plan in place to help those students who don't take it until the end of the semester or the summer semester to have some sort of help getting prepared. They're going to go back and do different types of things with them. So what we're looking at now is if a kid does not take the exam at all, a placeholder of 59 is what was discussed. We discussed 90, correct?
So not exactly. So what was discussed, so our proposals are slightly different in that in some ways you can see our proposal is actually more generous than the Durham proposal, depending on how you look at it. So what we proposed was no matter what, regardless whether you show up or not, 59 is the absolute minimum you could get. What Durham Public Schools is saying is if you attend a testing session, the minimum grade you will get is a 90. If you do not attend, you will get it incomplete until you attend one of the sessions. And if you do not attend any of the options, a 0 will be recorded. And obviously a zero
That's
compared to
biggie.
59 has a huge, much larger effect. I mean, if you think about it mathematically, the distance between a 0 and a 59 is larger than a 59 to 100. So
right.
The effect that will have on students' grades is huge. So, you know, that needs to be thought about in context. And what we're saying is, since we have already communicated with our families and students that 59 will be the lowest, that is the absolute lowest we will give anybody, no matter what, even if they never show up.
Okay, so bottom line, at some point, everybody's going to need to take their EOC, be it now, be it in January, at the end of the semester, or at the end of the summer program. That's
Correct.
Basically what we're saying. And it depends on what that particular choice is. If you never take the exam ever, then a 59 is the lowest grade that you can get. The 90 would be at this point in time, the 90 would be the placeholder until we get all of the scores in and the scores are curved.
So we can go back and ask Durham more specifically, So the 90 is only awarded once the student takes the test. It is awarded as a minimum. So we can inquire as to whether they're curving grades between 90 and 100, but a 90 is only given once the kid shows up into a building, sits for the test, completes it, and the results come in. Then any grades below a 90 will be converted to a 90, is our understanding.
Okay, so the 59 is the placeholder, right? I mean, the 59, if you never take it, the 90 is the placeholder. And after the exam is administered and you get your exam results, the lowest grade you can get.
I want to
Okay, go ahead.
clarify. Our recommendation would not be that 90 is used for a placeholder for any students who do not take the exam. Because
Okay.
what we don't want to have happen is what that would do for some students is it could improve their grade. And then if they never take the exam, their grade would go down retroactively. And we want to be clear with students about what the impact will be if they do not take the exam. So the recommendation would be either to do an incomplete if they do not take the exam, or a 59 if they do not take the exam, but not a 90 as a placeholder if they do not take.
And if a student, if they got an incomplete and never took the exam, how would that be averaged?
So it would basically keep the student's grade that they currently have in the course right now would be what would stay in their grade book until they took the exam. Like Ian said, the incomplete offers, some additional challenges, and the incomplete always has to be changed back to something at that point, either the 59 or a 90 or above. And so it would, in some ways, the incompletes in our past, the incompletes sometimes paint an unclear picture about what the implications will be if it never gets resolved, if that makes sense. And so the 59 would be the most would show students grade-wise what would happen if they never took the exam. The incomplete would basically keep the grade in limbo until they took the exam.
So 59 lowest, 90 placeholder until they take the exam.
So the recommendation would not be that a 90 is ever used as a placeholder.
Not 90, the 90 is a minimum. The 90 is a minimum after you take the exam. You get what Durham is saying, and what we're also agreeing with is that you get the 90 after you sit for the exam.
Right, and I didn't say it right, but that's yes. And if you never take the exam,
59.
It's 59. It's the 59, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, people, what do you think?
Well, I think that if we have the 59 as the lowest if they do not take the exam, and 90 if they do take the exam, that gives the students an impetus to make an attempt to get the test taken at some point before next semester, before the beginning of the next school year. And I think they will be able to do that late. If they don't do it in January, they could do it at the end of next semester or in the summertime. And protecting the grade as 90 is the lowest, then it protects the students from the difficulties of the year trying to take a test for a semester that happened 6 months previous and that sort of thing. So I would support that if we thought that was the way to go.
So let me ask, if we're saying if a student comes in and they get a 90 bottom line on their, whether they score below a 90 or not, we're saying give them a 90. So what's the incentive for the student to study or to do anything on the test other than go down and put all C's? Because they know they're going to get a 90.
So to be transparent about our discussions, about where we arrived at 59, that was part of our deliberations. We don't claim to have come up with the best solution, but that question right there, Ms. Sanford, was part of our question. How do we come up with an idea that really takes into account the difficulties of this situation, that tries to ensure academic integrity, that tries to give us data that reflects what our students know and don't know, and what our teachers taught and didn't teach, so we can improve instruction. I mean, it's kind of you're darned if you do, darned if you don't, if you know what I mean. It's hard. It's a great question. One thing I will say, just from my job point of view, two things actually. One is, and Laura already mentioned this, by law, we cannot do anything or say anything that discourages a student to show up for an exam. The other thing is, we still technically are bound by what's called the 95% rule. Now, our state is pursuing a waiver for that, but essentially what that means is, for each test we give in every subgroup within that test, we have to get 95% of those students to test in order to ensure validity for those test results, right? If we were to say, hey, all female students do not have to show up for this test, we wouldn't have valid results. So the state has this 95% rule to require a sufficient number of students to show up so that we're not, basically trying to skew our test results. So technically we're still bound by that. Now, it's possible the state will waive that. So we also can't do anything that discourages a student to show up for that reason as well.
And if students are taking this test next semester, and there is still going to be the data from the actual test is still going to have some bearing, not necessarily on their grade, but it will have bearing on the school and the district, correct?
Yes, so for accountability purposes, scale score is kind of the internal score that will not change no matter what. That is the tracking number that records a student's achievement within each assessment. And then percentile rank, which obviously ranks students compared to the rest of other students who took the exam. So those two scores, we have no authority to change those, and those will still be attached to students and schools for accountability purposes. The grade that is recorded in the grade book is the only thing that we have autonomy to make adjustment to.
And Durham even said something about that in kind of the bottom part of that notice, where it said even on a child's transcript that the original score would be present.
Right. So they're telling people there'll be a 90 grade placeholder, but the reality is that whatever they make on the test will be what's on their transcript. Is that right? Is that what you're saying, Derek?
So the grade, the actual test score will be in the student's records, and so that is attached to our school records in terms of the scale score the student gets and the percentile that they test at. The 90%, what goes on the transcript with the 90% would factor into the 20% of the final grade in the course, and that's not listed separately on the transcript. It's just the final grade overall in each of the courses. But the state test scores, yes, are attached to the student's records as well.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I know we've been going for a little while, but and I don't want to seem disrespectful, but can I hear from Ms. Cush? And if we have a SILSA or high school teacher on here, what their thoughts are?
I will say I feel really, thank you, Madam Chair. I feel very split, and I'm fortunate because SILSA right now only has one EOC on Wednesday because of our year-long classes. So our testing is really going to be impacted in May. So I only have like 27 students. So I think now knowing the details of Durham, I don't know if it's really going to help, because like somebody said, it sounds like it's incentivizing getting bodies in the seats. And is that what we're trying to do? What are we trying to do here? That's what I want to, what are we trying to do? And thank you.
Do you see a teacher that you have on here, Ms. Cush, that you can, or Derek, either, both of you?
We do have a couple of high school teachers on here.
Katie Williams is here, yes.
Katie Williams, you said? Miss Williams?
And Ms. Duffer is on here as well. They're both from the high school, but I think we should hear from them because SILSA's teachers are impacted a lot less than the high school kids because we're testing so few students at SILSA this semester. So I would love to hear from one of the high school folks.
Ms. Williams, are you here? Or Ms. Duffer, you said?
Hi, Katie Williams. I'm here. Duffer may be on as well. So I wasn't on during the part of the conversation where you all adopted the 90%. So I am lacking the rationale and the reasoning behind what you're doing. I will say that a student, if as soon as the students get wind, and they will, if they find out that walking in earns them a 90%. I was a good kid in school. I would walk in, Christmas tree the living daylight out of that thing, walk out with my A, because on a 10-point grading scale, a 90 is an A. I would go woot woot and walk in out in under 4 minutes. This school year, the fidelity and integrity of teaching and learning is already a little iffy. The testing we have feels about, saying showing up and breathing gets you a 90%, negates a lot. I would also argue it creates a double standard for the teacher-made exams, that my teacher-made exam is a 59%, but a state-made mandated exam is a 90%. And how is that fair for my students who took my test with effort and did not score a 90? So Duffer, if you're on, or any other high schooler, if you're on and want to say your thing. Hi, Duffer.
Hi, Sarah Duffer here, Asheville High School Sign. For inviting me. I would say I'd agree with Ms. Parks and Mr. Nelson's recommendations of having 59 being the default, in part because that's the message that we were given, and that's already what I have communicated to my students. Also, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with Ms. Williams. You know, we want students to take testing seriously, but I am very thankful for Principal Cush bringing up this question of what is our goal. So that's my perspective. I want students to take my final exam. You know, I worked on it with my PLC members. I think that we created some good exams. I think that it assesses the information that we learned. It's not a state EOC. It's not a state written test. So I want my students to take the test, but I don't want students to come to school fearing COVID. I think that we also just need to practice grace during this. It's just a tough time, right? So thank you.
So Duffer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is horrible. I mean, there's no good answer any way you look at it. And so what are we trying to do here? Well, I'm trying to keep from penalizing students because we have a pandemic, and I'm trying to make sure that we don't have any children or teachers, and I'm more concerned about you guys than I am about the kids, who are going to be exposed to the virus as a result of testing. Okay. Students would have an option of taking this now or in January, where I don't think things are going to be any better, or in June, where I hope that they will be, or at the end of the summer. I agree, they have to take the exam. It's just, for me, it's a matter of when. And it's a matter of what are we trying to do? Do we want to make kids feel like this is just ridiculous and why bother? Or do we want to give them some options that they can make their own choices as to what they feel most comfortable doing? The 59 for teacher-made test, absolutely. I don't think anybody there, because if you remember, we used to have 60 when the grayscale was different.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to penalize kids because of what has happened. And to me, it's getting real sticky with, do we do what's best at this point in time, or do we do, and Katie's right, there are going to be kids who are going to come in and Christmas tree because they don't feel like they have to do anything.
Right. What is the district's incentive to have EOC and CTE tests?
What is the incentive? It's federal mandate.
It's okay. And so,
So-
when you were talking earlier about when the Obama administration takes over, that might change because we're in a pandemic.
I wish the Obama administration was taking over, but no, it's the Biden administration. Yes, there has been quite a bit of talk about the fact that looking at this, historically, last semester, there was a waiver given, people could take pass fails. With the next administration, they are talking about retroactive doing things with national testing. We don't know that. So I don't know.
I think options are really important. I think that people in the community would really value having options. I also really I'm deeply thankful for you and the superintendent making very difficult decisions about at-home learning. It's not perfect. There are no perfect decisions in the year 2020, right? And I am thankful to be able to teach in my classroom, but then also to, protect my family from COVID. Why not offer options? Why not allow students who are taking into EOCs or the CTE courses to test either in January or the end of the year? They can opt to then have 59 as their placeholder exam score, with the understanding that then teachers, and I can't speak, on any other level except for the high school level, that we would complete grade change forms in the spring semester for any fall final exams that were taken. And then that way, by the end of the year, their grades and their transcripts would, be representative of the grade that they earned.
Okay. My understanding is that the three options were always available. Is that correct? The testing now, the testing in January, the testing.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. The state made that. Yes. The state made that concession early on, so that's always been available to us.
And just for
I think,
clarification,
if I may add in what Ms. Cush said earlier, Ms. Cush's comment was, when we really found out about Durham City, it's not that great of a deal because I got so many emails from parents saying, why don't you do what Durham City's doing? Well, no one understood that they were going to get a 0 if they didn't show up.
Right.
I think the last comment was very fair, the 59 holding. This is not a perfect scenario, and it won't be, but we have to defer on what's best for the students in a situation that legally we can't do anything about. And I think Ian said it very well. We can't discourage kids from coming to take the test.
I agree. Can I just have a clarification? We're not talking about the teacher exams. We're just talking about EOC and CTE, because with the 59, the teacher,
Right.
we had already said before that the teacher administered exams were not going to be affected by this 59. So all we're talking about are EOC and CTE exams right now for the fall semester.
So the teacher made exams do have a minimum of 59 as well. And that's across what we originally said was the 59 was the minimum across the board for all exams. And that really goes back to whether we feel like a final exam should cause a student to lose credit in a course during a global pandemic. And so the 59 would prevent a student in any course from failing a class that they were previously passing due to the exam.
Laura, could we opt to give them, for their final exam score, their semester average instead of a 59? So it wouldn't actually decrease their grade, and use whatever their semester average is as their placeholder until they take the final exam?
So if we wanted to keep for the EOCs, for the in-person exams, if we wanted to keep basically the student's current grade as the placeholder, the incomplete for the final exam would do that. And so again, just keeping in mind that all those incompletes would have to be resolved at some point before a student's grade in that class was finalized.
So what if you use, okay.
So the benefit
Deborah, I think that was a good idea.
The benefit of opting for a 59 on an EOC or on a CTE test is that if a student chooses to not take their final exam in January, in June, or in the summer, then they will experience no grade change. There will be no surprises, right? That's the benefit of the 59.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's true. Whereas if we put an incomplete in now and the student never takes the exam, then in June, when we finalize courses for the fall semester, they could have a negative impact at that point that they might not be fully expecting.
And nobody likes surprises.
Yeah.
As a classroom teacher, I really wish that we had had this conversation a week or 2 weeks ago. I've had a lot of conversations with faculty and with students just about the anxieties of the test week. So I don't know why we're waiting now, but I'm thankful for the conversation.
So, Jean, a decision doesn't, I know the kids are testing, but we don't have to come up with a decision today. Am I correct, Jean, Chris, whoever?
Yeah, we don't have to come up with a decision today, but I think we've circled around almost all the options to do this.
So I think one thing that I just want to point out that I think Durham has been very clear in their communication is the reason that they have made this change is so that they are encouraging students to test in the spring window. If we do not, I think it goes back to the question of I think that Kush asked, what is the reason for the change at this point? And if the reason for the change is so that students do not feel the pressure to come in this week, then I do think it is important that a decision is made much sooner rather than later. Because I don't think we would see a change in necessarily see a change in students' attendance if we did not make a decision. And again, we have had students come in to test today.
So we made this decision the other night to go with the 59%. Can we just stay with that decision?
Thoughts from the board?
I mean, we've circled around, like Jean said, we've circled around on this and not knowing, last week when we had our board meeting, we didn't know about the Durham decision and had no information in regards to that. And now we got information this weekend from tons of people. And now we've gotten more information since we talked earlier today. So I think that hearing from teachers has been important, and to hear that they are fine with the 59% percent. I think that, so that we're not throwing everyone huge curves at this point.
And I think that the biggest concern has been when they have to come and take the test. So I think it needs to be made clear that your child does not have to come and take the test this week. They can come in the spring or the summer and take the test and get their grades as well. So.
And, if we do it that way, and if everybody is fully aware, because I don't know that people were fully aware that there were options other than coming in this week. And I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't let my kid come in this week. I wouldn't. A 59 is a placeholder if you never, ever take the exam. You have options beside this week. We are in COVID. I can't see penalizing children for something that they had no control over, nor did we. I understand that teachers need to know right now. I know that that students do, the parents do. For me, as I said before, this semester is different from last semester because last semester we were able to give them a pass-fail. This semester we do not. Last semester they did have in-class instruction. This semester they don't. And I don't know how our teachers have done what they've done, but they've done a phenomenal job, but it's still not the same thing. So I would rather err on the side of being magnanimous than on the side of being disciplinary. I will go with whatever the board decides with this. I do agree that we do need to make parents and students aware that they have the option. I know that we need to have a certain number of kids testing. We were not allowed to give tests online or the EOCs online. It's a terrible situation. 59 if you never take the exam, that's fine with me, whatever the rest of the board decides going forward. I just feel like I'd rather err on the side of being more lenient than not.
Well, I think that 59 is actually better than a 0, as Ian said before.
Well, no, I think we said that. The 59 is if you never take the exam.
Right. If you never take the exam, I
Right.
think, and that's what I was saying, going back to what we decided last week and earlier today. I think that if we stay with the 59, if you never come in, if you absolutely never come in between now and June of 2021 to take a test, you are still getting a 59 versus a 0.
Right. And I think that is fair. The 59 if you never take the exam. Everybody does need to take their exams though. Teachers have worked really hard and I think that's really important. And I think that's where we need to make sure the communication goes out. And here again, that's just my opinion.
So I think the board has to decide, are you going with what you went on at the last meeting, or do you want to propose a 90 in the place of that with a 59 for those students who don't come in? It's interesting. I'm watching the comment section and we were criticized for not having teacher input. We have teacher input. It doesn't seem like many of the commenters are liking the teacher input now, which just shows you how convoluted and difficult this decision is. The teachers, to my knowledge, were involved with setting the base 59. And as a board, you guys have to just decide, is 59 the base, what you did last time, or is it better to go with a 90 and be more generous in the long run for the students? The other thing I want to say to the parents, you have options. You do not have to send your kid in this week. And that's a decision you have to make. I'm with Martha on this. I'd rather be more generous with our students, but I'm going to defer to the high school staff and the high school teachers that have spoken. They're the ones that work with these students day in and day out. And if they want to keep it the way it was, the board's just going to have to make a decision.
I think what we heard from the teachers was to keep it as it is because they do have opportunities to come between now and the end of the summer to change that 59. Correct? Am I correct as to what the teachers, Sarah, Katie?
And Derek on here, I'd like to hear.
Derek and Nicole. We can't hear you, Katie. I see your mouth moving.
Sorry, I didn't unmute, my fault. I know, I do it with the kids too. I don't know what teachers were supposedly part of this discussion. We found out via an email that the floor was 59. And we found out, Sarah, if you can help me, last week? It wasn't that long ago that we were told 59. If teachers were part of the decision, I do not know which teachers.
So do you disagree
the
with
90?
the 59?
Well, so hang on. So that's just flat out whose decision, because Mr. Freeman, you said teachers were part of this discussion. The 90, the only reason I know about this is a text chain that came up that said, holy crap, the board just voted that the floor is a 90. And we all went, what the what? And I hopped on the Zoom.
So we didn't make an official vote. We took a consensus based off of information to if that was what was, but we're revisiting the conversation because we don't know.
Cool.
We were told as well that teachers were a part, and that's why I asked you and whoever else was on the call that was a teacher to let us know.
Yeah,
because we don't.
At least none of us, right? I mean, maybe there were teachers and they just aren't on this call, to be fair. But I I understood it to be like a central office kind of top-down decision that was made.
And to be honest, a lot of us made a tacit decision, and again, not all, because leadership, that grades would be the average or your score, whichever is higher, again, to avoid penalizing students. Most of this is based on, we all acknowledge that things are very, very wrong. How do we avoid penalizing students? You maintain your average. But guys, there's a lot of conversation going on right now that involves the words "the teachers knew." I would really like to know who those teachers were.
So can you all just tell us what you think the bottom line, what should be the bottom line? Should it be the 59 or should it be higher? What should it be for, so that it doesn't cause harm to students, but it also doesn't incentivize them to come in your classrooms and, you know, just mark up a test just to get a 90 on it?
I think a semester average has benefits because for those students who have worked really hard, who have taken advantage of opportunities given to them, and who have, you know, shown consistency and effort throughout the entire year, that at least their final exam can be like a, that grade can just default to their semester average. I think that seems fair. Now, if we're trying to really incentivize students to take their state written final exams, a 59 makes more sense. Equity is certainly an issue. You know, I have a lot of kids who don't have the support at home and don't have the parents, the grandmas, the aunties and uncles who are riding them and telling them, you know, let me see where you've turned in that work, or you know, who are communicating with teachers. It's tough.
I'm a high school teacher. I'm on here as well. I've just been listening. I haven't really been saying anything, but you know, I have a few things that I'd like to share just for information's sake. One,
Can you tell us your name? Can you tell us your name?
Amanda Schoonover.
Okay.
I'm the science department chair at the high school. One, as far as I know, most teachers found out about the 59 rule on Friday in an email. I'm on the department chairs. I know Katie Williams is a department chair, and since we're kind of a, you know, teacher leader group here, we weren't involved in the conversation. I'm not sure anybody from school improvement team was either. So if those people weren't involved in the decision, then I'm not really sure what teacher leaders were. The other thing that I will say that I don't think anybody's sort of blatantly saying in this meeting, and I kind of want to understand, is how important is it for our school for us to test 95% of these subgroups? Because if it is tied to funding, if it is tied to our future, then I think that we really have to talk about, although we don't like it, and it's not our decision, it's the federal government's decision, but how much we need to incentivize kids to take the test at some point between now and the summer. So to me, I really want to understand. I think the 59 bottom is a good idea in terms of incentivizing, if that's really what we're trying to do, as well as the 90% for them to show up, which I know it doesn't seem fair, and grades are just, you know, they're kind of whatever this year, semester, what, I don't know how much they're really going to mean in the long term, but you know, how important is it for us to test a certain percentage of these kids for the future? That's my question.
So in a normal non-COVID year, the 95% rule is part of our accountability measures. And for any group or subgroup that we do not meet, we have to submit a plan as to how we're going to increase that rate of participation. If that happens too often, then we have to step up our level of planning from the state's point of view. I have heard through the grapevine that we are applying for the 95% rule to be waived this year. I haven't heard yet if there's a definitive result, so I don't want to promise or imply that's necessarily going to happen. But in terms of your question, Ms. Schoonover, about is there specific funding associated with 95% participation? There's not specific monies that we withdrawn this year associated with the 95% participation. That is our goal in every year. But obviously, because of COVID, there's conversations about whether or not that's a realistic goal. But we have no say in whether or not that requirement is put on this. That will be part of the state and federal government waiver process.
Okay, well then in answer to that, so I think that we have a lot of time to do this testing. I really wish it would have been clearly communicated to teachers and to families that we don't really have to do testing this week. We're all here in this building in the peak of COVID and encountering, lots of different people right before break, risking a lot of people's health when we knew coming into this that they didn't need to test till January, until the spring, till the summer now. So I do think that we need to make a decision. It needs to be communicated today. I think it should be communicated today so people can make the decision that's best for themselves and their families, and we can keep teachers and families safe. And if students have the opportunity to take the test in the spring and in June, I mean, I'm the science department chair. I'm a science teacher. I really feel like it's going to be safer then, and we will get a lot of people tested, and there will be time to make revisions if for some reason the COVID is still very rampant at that time.
So, sorry, board, this is Mr. Edwards, Principal Edwards. I just want to kind of pull us back into what decision is in front of us. And I think that from what I heard, we're trying to decide between several things. One, 59 being the bottom score that you can get across the board. I know because of the Durham decision, part of the conversation was whether or not a 90 would be a score if somebody takes the test or not. And there was a little bit of conversation about what goes in as a placeholder, whether that's a 59 or incomplete. So it feels like ahead of us, those are the kind of three choices that we have, correct? Am I wrong?
It sounds to me like you've wrapped it up the way I'm understanding at least.
Okay. So we just, I mean, it's 2:40 in the afternoon. We've had kids testing all day. We've got, scheduled tests for the rest of the week. I would like to, at least ask you all for guidance so we can move forward and get what we need to communicate out to families, staff, and students.
So what's wrong with doing what we said? You have the option of taking these tests in January, at the end of the semester, and at the end of summer school. At that time, there will be classes and there will be prep sessions if you choose to wait. Classes, somebody helping you do study groups or something. It is up to you and your parents to determine when you take the test. And it really should be up to the parent and the student because it's dangerous, or I feel like it's dangerous right now. Make that very clear and let people understand that they have those choices. That's important to me. And if they choose not to come in, I don't blame them, and it may be that nobody comes in, but they have those choices. And I don't know that that was really clearly stated, or if it was, and it could have been, but it just kind of got lost in the minutia. But for me, allowing parents to make those choices is really, really, really important.
So what would it look like if we had the 59% as the score if they did not show up, and we said if they do show up, we give them something like a 70%, and then they can earn more than 70%, and maybe that will incentivize those students to actually take the test properly. It just, because from what I understood from what Principal Cush said was that giving them a 90 is really, what is the purpose of even going that far? And but clearly, if if we're not encouraging them to take the test, that could have ramifications for the district in the future.
So what I heard was a 59 if you never show up, and as a placeholder, a 70 would be the minimum for anybody who takes the test. Is that correct?
That's what that's a suggestion.
Okay.
And a 70 is a C?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. I would be fine with that.
And just to be completely transparent, so for most students' grade, it's going to be about a 2% difference on their final grade between a 59 and a 70. So just to keep that in mind.
75?
So again, I'm not a teacher, and I know we have retired teachers. Martha's on here. I think we should, so Dr. Freeman and the board was under the impression that teachers had been spoken to, and they have not. And when we make decisions, it's based off of what we were told. We weren't given, from what we've heard, maybe they did talk to some teachers, we don't know. But what it sounds like is that teachers weren't consulted on it. For me, I'm not gonna sit here and determine a grade that teachers should have some input and principals together. So I think the principals can go back and talk to their teachers and then let us know what the teachers actually came up with. But in the meantime, the three options don't change. You don't have to go take the test this week. You can go this week, you can go in the spring, or you can go in the summer. So I think those are the things that need to be communicated, and then maybe Principal Cush and Derek can come back with us as to what their teacher recommendations and their recommendation is. Were you about to say something, Chris?
No, I agreed. And I think that you could stick to the minimum of the 59 and refer it back to the administration. I mean, right now it's been communicated that it would be a minimum of a 59 if you didn't take the test. That's consistent with the way the district is handling other tests, and that it could just be referred back to the administration for further decisions on that, because things are going to change and there will be decisions made at the federal level that will change this as well. So I think a minimum of a 59 is what I'm hearing that you're at today, and you'll let the administration look at that issue a little more closely. Does that make sense?
Go ahead.
I just need to hear from Ian or somebody in charge of testing that's saying a minimum of 59 right now, but that's going to be looked at further, does not interfere with anything the administration is trying to do.
So from a testing point of view, the grade is actually just sort of ancillary. I mean, from a testing point of view, our job is to administer with fidelity, create a safe environment, and ensure that, you know, no misadministration is created. The grading decision actually is sort of outside of testing. It's more in the curriculum administrative side. So the grading decision can happen, you know, we obviously would have loved to have everything buttoned up well before, but the grading decision can happen sort of at any point. So, and just part of the conversation weeks ago was about ensuring that there was consistency across schools, right? You know, we do have a situation where we have two schools on one campus, and just being sure that students were affected similarly, regardless of which school they attended.
So are we good with moving forward? James, Martha, Joyce. Where's Joyce? I don't see you. Oh, there she, okay. I'm sorry, Joyce. Are we fine with just moving forward with it the way they said with the 59 for now? And then once we get more information from Jean and the principals and teachers, we can, if we need to make changes, we can make changes then.
Okay, I have to jump in, and I'm going to cause a problem, but I feel very strongly. I understand the teacher's point of view. I understand their perception. I also wonder what it is we are trying to accomplish. If we are trying to accomplish what is right for every single child in our system, I think we need to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And I really feel strongly that, you know, the 59 grade if you never take the exam. You know, that's great. That's what it should be. Going forward, I think we were on the right track, in my opinion, and I think maybe we've veered off a little bit. I, of course, am one person, and my opinion doesn't really count for anything. I think that this has been horrendous, and I'm a 72-year-old lady, and I've never seen anything like this. And my vote is to vote for whatever makes life better for our kids at this point in time. So I will bow to whatever the board decides. I understand what everyone is saying. But yeah, I would rather err on the side of leniency than not. And my friends who are teachers are probably going to all hate me, but that's kind of where I am. I think teacher-made tests, obviously, that is their purview. The EOCs and the CET courses, for me, are a totally different thing. I also realize that probably with the new administration, which is what I'm counting on, that all of this is going to be a moot point anyway, because I know that when Biden gets in, this will be seen as being absolutely ridiculous. You don't put children in this situation after the situation that they've been in. But we will do whatever, you know, if I could waive testing, I would waive testing. If we could waive the testing until June for everybody, I would do that, but we can't. And the feds have got us So I'm sitting here running my mouth. I feel very strongly about this, which is why I have been harassing people for a while. I, of course, will do whatever the board feels is best. This is a horrible situation, and I look forward to hearing from Principal Cush and Principal Edwards and whomever. I just would like to get this taken care of today, if at all possible.
I agree with you, Martha. I think we've put it to the point where we need to just come up with a decision and make it. And I really appreciate all the work that Ian and Laura and Nicole and Derek have done on this. And I want them to understand I respect them and their decisions that they made thus far. But I think Ian said to us, and I think that Derek said to us, that they really need us to give them direction now. If we're going to change something at this point, we need to go ahead and make a decision. And so, and sending it back to the teachers at this point, it's maybe a little bit late. I agree with you, Shonda, that the teachers should have been consulted, and I would really like to hear their opinion. But at this point, I think we need to just make a decision and give them direction.
Do we have the ability to waive the test?
My recommendation is that we give no less than a 90 to any kid that takes this exam, and we have a floor of 59 for those kids who never come in and take the exam. We just have to make some decisions here, and that is generous, and it errs on the side of the student. My recommendation is that there's nothing less than a 90 given on the state and federal tests that are required of the school district, and that a 59 is a placeholder, and if students never come in, they get a 59.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to that respect.
I second that motion. I second that. Shonda, is that okay?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. I was just yapping. I have to hear from everybody, James, as well, because it's virtual.
Well, you haven't called for the vote yet. You've just got a motion and second. So at this point, you would be asked if there was any further discussion.
Any further discussion?
No, I already said my piece about it. I think we've gone round and round and round. I'm getting dizzy right now. So if the vote is with a base of 59, if they never come in and take the test, I don't think that penalizes people. And I think that if you do come in and take the test, and that, that's something that's incentivized you. I do agree with the teachers that, Katie Williams said, what would keep a person from Christmas treeing it? So I don't believe that a 90 should be, if you come in and take the test, that you get a 90. That's my opinion. But I also have the right to not vote for it. So there we go.
So Jean, what if it was an 80? Because that's a B, correct?
I can live with that. We just have to
What
be
difference
generous
does it
with
make?
children. This is a crazy.
90 is an A, and you're showing up to get an A, and you may do nothing on your test, whereas a B, you may work a little harder. It gives you a little incentive to want to do better. If you are an above average student or even an average student, an 80 won't be good enough for you. So you're going to come in and try to work harder on that test. But
I'm going to jump in again, and then I promise I won't say anything else. My concern is kids coming in the middle of a pandemic when we know that things are going crazy in this area, coming into school this week to take the test. Can we move the test to next week? No. If we can,
we're not even talking about the moving of the test because they don't have to
What
come
we're talking
take the
about.
test. They don't
What
have,
I'm
no one
talking.
has to come take the test. We're going to make sure we send that
So-
out the minute we come out of this meeting. Nobody has to come take the test this week. They can
I
come
understand that. I understand that. But you've got kids who are going to come in and take the test this week. Okay.
Let's negotiate.
I'll
And
calm
it's very
down.
arbitrary. It's very but 85. But let's just set this where we are generous to students, that they don't feel the need they have to come in this week if they don't want to. Just make it an 85 with a floor of 59. Just so we aren't harming students who might feel obligated. Look, when they're out of the classroom for 4 weeks or 4 months, there's going to be a deterioration of the facts that they learned. Why not be generous? But if it's an 85, that's fine with me. We just need to move folks on this so that we can get the word out. Take the test if you want this week. If you don't want, you're going to get a floor of 59 until you take it. You're not going to make less than an 85 if you take it.
I can live with that. I'd rather have 90.
I can live with that.
I can live with
So
that.
my recommendation is that a floor of 59, if you don't take the exam ever in the 3 periods or 4 periods you can take it, you get a 59. If you take it, you're not making less than the 85. That's the recommendation. How about that one?
I like it.
And
I do too.
That can be
We're meeting halfway.
that can be a friendly amendment to the motion. Otherwise, we'll need a new motion because I believe the prior motion was for 90.
I make a motion that we amend the motion to down to 85.
I second that.
Shonda, go ahead and vote on the amendment, please, and do it by roll call.
All right. So the motion is for 85 is the minimum you can receive on the exam, and then the 59 is the floor. So I just need to make or call each individual for their vote.
What we're doing is we're amending the motion, so call on each person yes to amend the primary motion, and then we will vote on the primary motion.
Okay, James, yes to amend the primary
Yes.
motion. Joyce,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
okay. So
Shonda, what do you, yes?
I vote yes.
And now you can move to vote on the primary motion if there's no further discussion.
Is there any further discussion?
I just
May I
want
have
to
a
make.
motion?
Wait. I just
I
want
was
to make.
about to say mute her. So may
I
I have a
just
motion?
want to, no, hold on, Shonda. I just want to make sure that people understand, because it keeps popping up in the chat. You do not have to go, your child does not have to go take a test this week. It doesn't make any sense to penalize those who want to come and take a test this week as well. So if you don't want your kid to come take a test this week, they don't have to come. They can come in January, they can come in June. Just don't think that we're making this decision and not thinking about that as well. It's not that we're forcing people to come take tests this week. If you want to come, Ian and Derek and the staff there are going to be there. So this is not you're forcing people to come in this week. All right. Just want to make sure that people understand that. So go ahead and take that vote, Shonda.
May I have a motion, please? To
So moved.
vote? Okay, ma'am.
We already have a motion and second on the record. It's been amended. So Shonda, all you have to do is ask each person to vote by name.
All right. James, please vote.
Yes.
Joyce Brown, please vote.
I vote yes.
Martha Geithner,
Yes.
and I vote yes, Shonda Sanford.
Good.
Ms. Griffin.
And
had to
that will
leave.
go out today, right?
So moved.
And that'll go out today to all the
Yes, Ms.
parents
Scott.
and the, okay.
Yes,
Yes,
Ms.
I've
Scott.
already started working on the communication. Yes, ma'am. It'll go out today.
Right. So if you do not want your child again to go test this week, it is your choice, but you don't get to make choices for the other parents that want to send their children. So if you don't want your kids to go this week, don't send them. They'll have an opportunity in January, in the spring, and in the summer to still take the test, and they'll still be able to pass or take their end of grade test before that time, before it would turn into that 59. So we're gonna get that communication out, and I don't even know where we are on our agenda. What's next? Is that anything? Is that the last thing?
No, we got to do our
Our
voting on
action
our
items.
action items.
Okay.
Each of the action items, starting with the approval to explore the selling of the Asheville Primary School and the closing of the school. And again, just to clarify, Madam Chair, that is just to start this process. Communication will go out regarding student assignment for the remainder of this year in programs. So there will be a communication sent out. All this does is start the process. There will be plenty of opportunities for public input.
Correct. This just starts the investigative part for Dr. Freeman. Communication will go out to the Asheville Primary School parents regarding the preschool and the Montessori school. So do I still take an individual vote? May I have a vote, Ms.
Motion and second to approve, and then a roll call vote.
Motion, please, to approve the exploration of the selling of the Asheville Primary School.
So move.
Have a
Second.
All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
okay, I forgot I have to do each one of you individually. Joyce?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Aye. Yes.
James?
Aye.
James?
Yes.
And Martha?
Yes.
Okay, so moved. Next, the housing internet contract. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, Joyce, yay or nay?
Yes.
James?
Aye.
Martha?
Yes.
So moved. The
Sean,
field.
Assuming you're a yes. If you don't vote no, we're going to assume you're a yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yes. Okay. The field turf at Asheville High School, the baseball field contract. May I have a motion, please?
So
I
moved.
moved.
May I have a
Second.
second?
And that
All right.
subject to final legal review. Go ahead.
Okay. Joyce,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. All right, policies 4023, 6305, 7510, and 9030. May I have a motion, please?
I move
So
that we
moved.
accept those
Have a second?
Second.
Joyce,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Shonda, yes. So moved. Phase 2, 3000 series, second and final read. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Joyce,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
Shonda, yes. All right, may I have a motion to approve the personnel report number 5, which was discussed in closed session, please? May I have a motion?
So move.
May I have a second?
Second.
All right, Joyce,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Martha,
Yes.
and I also agree, yes. All right, is there any further discussion? All righty, announcements. There's an optional teacher workday on Monday, the 21st. Annual leave days will be December 22nd, 23rd, 29th, and 30th. No school for staff or students from December 24th 24th, 25th, 28th, 31st, and January 1st. We wish you all a happy holiday. If there is nothing further, meeting adjourned. Have a great, I need a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Have a second.
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 All right, Joyce? One more
Yes.
time. Yes, James?
Yes.
Martha?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Have a great afternoon, everybody.